Initiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the American people, the world is watching a really horrendous, barbaric, horrible situation in Ukraine. And we're all praying for the people there, trying to do as much as we can to support them. And this barbarism we're seeing from Vladimir Putin is something I don't think anyone's ever going to forget. We can't let it stand. We need to use all instruments of American power with our allies to work to address this long-term, because this is a long-term problem. The new era of authoritarian aggression led by Putin, led by Xi Jinping, and we need to be able to address it. One of these instruments of American power that we've had until recently, in a bipartisan way, every president has supported being an energy producer, being an energy superpower, being a country that's energy independent. And Mr. President, I don't have to tell you, but this has been highlighted by the current crisis. What's happened is the American people, really the world, have awoken to the fact that the Biden administration came into office and instead of building on what they inherited from the Trump administration, which again was a bipartisan goal of American foreign policy, American energy policy, American domestic policy for decades, every president wanted America to be energy independent. President Obama used to talk about this. All of the above: energy, oil, gas, renewables. Jimmy Carter, of course. Donald Trump, George W. Bush. I mean, it dates back for decades until the Biden administration. And of course, Mr. President, they came in and on day one said, we're going to start shutting down the production of American energy. That's a fact. I'm going to go through a lot of the facts. I'm going to go through some detailed memos that are still in existence that show that this is exactly their policies. Now, what has happened in the last 2 weeks? The American people have started to realize, oh my gosh, my own government is trying to make it harder for us to produce American energy. How does that make sense? In what world does that make sense? In the average American, always very smart, by the way, much smarter than the people in D.C., are raising the alarm bell, saying, wait a minute, why would we do that? Hurts us at home, drives up energy prices. The president's calling it Putin's energy increases. That's ridiculous. Energy prices have been going up since this administration got into office because of this administration's policies. Good try, Mr. President. That's not going to work. So the American people are saying it's hurting us at home, it's raising costs on my family, but they're now realizing, like, whoa, this is really bad for our foreign policy and national security too, when you have a war like what's going on in Ukraine. So all of a sudden, you see the Biden administration, from the president on down, his whole team starting to scramble. They're starting to hide their policy that's been driven by a far-left radical agenda and is really hurtful to everybody. And by the way, it doesn't help the environment one bit, not one bit. I'll come down here in another speech and talk about how it hurts the environment. And Mr. President, it's almost funny to watch this happen if this weren't such a serious topic. It's almost funny. As a matter of fact, to one cabinet official, it was funny. Go Google the Secretary Granholm interview, I forget which news station, when she was asked, hey, are you going to help produce more oil for America? She literally starts cracking up, laughing. She's laughing. It's not funny, Madam Secretary. So now the White House is scrambling with made-up stories, made-up rationales. See the press secretary kind of trying to talk about this issue. No offense to her, she's pretty talented, but she doesn't know anything about energy. But they're scrambling because no one is laughing. No one's laughing. The Secretary of Energy might be laughing about this topic, but no one's laughing. Working families in America aren't laughing. The energy workers that this administration has moved to hand pink slips to aren't laughing. Our allies in Europe aren't laughing. The Ukrainians aren't laughing. The only one who might be laughing are the Venezuelans and the Iranians, who this administration is now going and begging them for oil from. They might be laughing. So it's a really serious topic, Mr. President. And as I mentioned, the energy price rise that we've seen across the last year, gas prices were almost up 50% prior to the invasion of Ukraine by Putin. So we know what's going on because it's no secret. When the president was campaigning, again, I don't think this was really his views, but driven by the far left that he had to get their vote on, he vowed that he would do exactly what he did on day one. Here's the president in a debate in 2019. Quote, "I've argued against any more drilling, no more drilling or oil or gas drilling on federal lands. I will not allow it anymore," unquote. That's the President of the United States. Now, on day one, he did just that. He did just that. He started out to keep these campaign promises. We know he canceled the Keystone Pipeline. They put a, quote, pause, and I'm going to talk about that, on federal leasing and permitting, something that really impacted my state. He signed an executive order to crack down on oil and gas production. He canceled the legally acquired leases that my state has in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge because this body voted for it. Signed into law, the president, in a blatantly illegal move, said, "I'm not going to allow these leases," even though the Congress of the United States and the President of the United States previously passed a law saying they had to be executed. And just 2 weeks ago, the administration froze new drilling permits and stopped issuing new leases on federal lands because they continue to be driven by a far-left agenda that nobody in the United States is supporting right now. But, Madam President, I want to dig a little deeper into what happened on day one. So, what happened here, I have an order. This is an order, order number 3395 from the Acting Secretary of the Interior, a guy by the name of Scott De La Vega. I've never heard of him. Never heard of him. Who the heck is that? But it was dated January 20th, 2021. So that's day one. That's day one. Some guy named Scott De La Vega. Don't know who he is, but I guess he was Acting Secretary of Interior. And he lays out in this memo everything that should be suspended. Everything in America to stop producing any natural resources for 60 days. Okay? That's your government at work, America, right here. Scott De La Vega. Hereby temporarily suspends, and then they have a whole list of things that deal with oil, gas, minerals, rights of way, anything on federal lands, all stopped. If that's not a far-left radical agenda, I don't know what is. Now, it says that people above him, the secretary, deputy secretary, they can rescind that after 60 days, but there was no one above him. This is day one. There's nobody even confirmed. That's why Scott De La Vega, whoever the heck he is, was Acting Secretary of Interior. But don't be fooled. This is day one, an order from the Biden administration to shut down the production of American energy. Your government at work, America. Now, what happened across the country? I can tell you what happened in my state. This set off a mad scramble in Alaska. I was getting phone calls, literally, from this memo. I didn't know anything about it. Why? Why? What was happening here? Because, Madam President, in my state, because we have the highest environmental standards in the world on oil and gas development, on mineral development. We do our exploration only in the winter. Only in the winter, about 3-month period. January, February, March, April, 4 months. Because we create ice roads and ice pads. These are giant roads of ice and giant pads of ice that can take out giant drill rigs on the tundra, and we do our exploration then, and then we bring it off in 4 months. The ice roads melt, and there's zero impact. It's called zero impact exploration. Okay? It's expensive, but we do that in Alaska because we really care about our environment. We know how to do both, protect the environment, develop our resources. So we only have about 3 to 4 months to even do this work every winter. So I had a bunch of Alaskans, hundreds, thousands, out doing the work of America, oil and gas development. Old Mr. De La Vega comes out here, day one of the Biden administration, says, we're going to suspend any lease or permit. So when you're in the oil and gas industry, you're constantly having to get additional permits, what they call APDs, applications to drill, to build an ice road, to do other things that way beyond leases, Jen Psaki, way beyond leases. You have to get these permits reviewed and updated very frequently. Well, they said no issuing of anything. So I got a call, I'll give you one example, from a company that had almost 300 people doing exploration work. And they were just told, you're not going to get anything else for 60 days. They couldn't do anything. They're going to fire all 300 people. We scrambled, we made phone calls, we tried to get this order lifted, tried to get an exception. This was happening all across America. The federal government came in, the Biden administration, that was day one, Mr. De La Vega. Again, don't know who he is. But he issued this order, 60 days, and stopped everything. And Joe Biden's out there saying, oh, no, we really care about energy production. No, you don't. You're trying to kill it. Okay, so that was the mad scramble. Many people were laid off. This is way beyond Keystone, 10,000 laid off. But let me go into a little bit more detail. So after 60 days, what happened? Now, Madam President, this is really important. And I really want our friends in the media to dig into this. So again, you have these things called applications to drill on federal leases. Okay? All of that was stalled. 60 days, you couldn't do a thing. This is just a year ago, right? Just a year ago. From this administration that's now telling the American people, oh no, we're fully for energy development. They were trying to kill it. Okay, so normally, when you have a lease on a federal land, you have federal managers. I'll give you the example in Alaska. The Bureau of Land Management, they'll have a field manager, right? So let's say there's a field manager for BLM in Fairbanks, Alaska, okay? That man or woman has a fair amount of authority. They can issue these applications to drill, to move forward. This is a government that's not centralized, right? You want the decision makers, who, by the way, are almost all professional career staff, to make science-based decisions, not political decisions, on these applications to drill. That's the way it works. That's the way it's always worked. So you have a field manager, say in Fairbanks. You'll have a district-level manager, okay, say in the interior part of Alaska, and then you'll have one state director, the BLM state director, okay? So they usually, not even the state director, the lower-level federal officials can issue these permits to keep the country moving, producing oil, gas. Now, what happened after 60 days? After 60 days in 2021. So you have the Biden administration, Mr. De La Vega, just shutting down all energy production for 60 days in America. That's this order. So after 60 days, what happened? Well, there was another order issued, and this was issued by a woman, an official named Laura Daniel Davis. She's the acting assistant secretary for the Office of Land and Mineral Management, okay? Sounds kind of important. It's actually really important. That's the assistant secretary at Interior in charge of all oil and gas and mineral development for America. Pretty important job. In the Trump administration, we had a really great Alaskan, Joe Balash. He had that job. Did a great job, by the way. So after 60 days, acting assistant secretary for the land and mineral management, oil and gas, mining, she issues a memo. I have it right here, Madam President. I quote from some of it. She issues a memo. And what her memo says was, hey, you got that executive order, 60-day delay by Mr. De La Vega? Okay, that's running out in 2 days. This was March 19th, 2021. It's not even a year old. What she says in her order is that, you know how you guys in the federal agencies, the field manager, the district level manager, the state director, all across America, I'm just giving you one example in Alaska. You know how you all have authority to issue permits to drill, things like that? That's the way it's been going on for decades and decades. Well, I, Acting Assistant Secretary Laura Daniel Davis, I'm taking that away from you. I'm taking that away. So her memo says, every decision, she lists a bunch, okay? Every decision, now remember, nobody was able to do anything for 60 days. Now we're saying, all right, the 60-day delay is over, but any decision that you lower-level people, BLM and others, had to make on applications to drill and permits like that, hundreds and hundreds, across the country, she says, I'm going to quote from her, for those matters that have been submitted in accordance with S3395, 3395 was essentially, she's referencing the executive order that says stop everything. She now says, if you haven't received any kind of approval for that stuff, now I'm quoting, if you have not received final ASLM, that's her, decision, you may not proceed on any of these permits without approval from ASLM, meaning her. Okay, so think about that. Think about that. This is an administration saying that they really care about moving oil and gas on federal lands forward. First 60 days, they just say everything's stopped. Then they say, all right, if you're going to move forward the way it used to work, field managers, district level managers, state directors in every state in America, no. You don't have that authority. Me, Assistant Secretary, acting, by the way, she's still not confirmed by the Senate. Every one of those has to come to me for my approval. Everyone. Everyone in Alaska, everyone in New Mexico, everyone in North Dakota, anywhere, by the way, all on the offshore Gulf of Mexico, anywhere that at the lower levels in the federal government, you had professional staff who had the authority to grant these applications for drill and other federal permits. This memo says, nope, that will be centralized under me. For America, every darn decision for oil and gas production and mineral production in the country has to be approved by this acting assistant secretary. Guess what, Madam President? This memo is still in operation right now. Right now. When the President of the United States looks at the American people, when Jen Psaki, oh, we're doing everything. No, you're not. You got one person on this order. So, and think about, I'm not going to go into her background much, but let's just face it. If you look at it, she spent a whole career trying to take out the oil and gas industry. Okay? Now she's in charge of every decision for every permit on every federal lease for the production of American energy in the country. And she's still in charge. You got one person. Now, and by the way, this is a political appointee. I don't think she's going to get confirmed because I'm going to block her, that's for sure. But even some of my Democratic colleagues are like, this is going on right now. Okay? My friends in the media, I hope you take a look at this. And what's really interesting here, you have someone who's a political appointee, a career trying to take out the oil and gas industry. And none of this is based on science. This is all political. They're removing the career staff, the scientists, saying, hey, it's got to be up to me. One political appointee in charge of issuing all permits in the United States in the energy sector, still going on. This would be like if you wanted to get a loan, right? And you went to your local bank in your hometown. Let's say it was Bank of America. There was a local bank, Bank of America in your hometown. This would be like having to go to the headquarters on Wall Street to get approval for your loan. Think about it. That's going on right now. And the president has the audacity to look the American people in the eye saying, oh, we're trying to do all we can. No, you're not. Why don't you rescind this order? This is part of the Biden administration's obsession from day one with stopping the production of American energy and politicizing it with a political appointee, who, by the way, doesn't know much about the industry either. But, Madam President, there's more to this memo. It gets quite interesting because there's this kind of doublespeak in it. I'm gonna read from a little bit of it. She says that for matters that have been submitted in accordance with the shutdown, 60-day shutdown, but for which you have not received approval from me, you are still not allowed to move forward. You've got to come through me, the one political appointee who doesn't like the energy sector. Okay, but here's the interesting thing. She says, but please provide early notification, so flag it if it's an item coming up to me that are part of the administration's priorities. I'm quoting right now. For example, renewable energy projects, those will go to the front of the line, or other climate-related milestones, I'm quoting, 30 by 30 initiatives, that's shutting down 30% of all federal lands. It's not in law, by the way. That's another radical thing they're doing. Or actions related to racial equity, environmental justice. Okay? This is in her memo. So she's saying, hey, I get to approve everything, all applications, drill, any permits on any federal land, anything, one person. But if it's part of a far-left radical agenda, by the way, that has nothing to do with energy production, give me a heads up. And then she says, as well as early notification on items that are of high local, state, or regional interests. I'm quoting. What does that mean? Early notification, so that's like, hey, make sure she knows on items that are of high local, state, or regional interest. What does that mean? I don't know. It's kind of code for something. Let me give you one example where I think it's code for. So remember, she's in charge of issuing all these permits. And there's been a flood of oil and gas production permits. Guess which state in America, in the first year of the Biden administration, has had close to half of all oil and gas drilling permits issued by the Department of Interior approved? Remember, she's approving them all. She doesn't really like oil and gas, but if she's got to approve some, it might be related to items that are of high local, state, or regional interest. I wonder who that is. Who is it? Is it Alaska? No, I don't think so. Trust me. They're delaying us as much as they can. They don't like us. 22 executive orders and executive actions solely focused on Alaska by this administration. They really don't like us. Is it Texas? North Dakota? The state that's got close to half of all oil and gas drilling permits that this acting assistant secretary is in charge of granting, because remember, she centralized everything, is New Mexico. New Mexico. Whoa, New Mexico? New Mexico. You think New Mexico would be of high state or regional interest? If you're her and your boss is from New Mexico? Probably. Or if you have the senator from New Mexico calling all the time? Probably, right? So I really wish the media would look into this, right? Because right now you got the President of the United States, Jen Psaki and others, saying, well, we're trying to do everything we can here. You got this memo that's still in effect by an acting assistant secretary saying, I'm going to control every permit issued in America on federal lands. It's right here. Read it. And you can't move, you regional directors in BLM, in Fairbanks, Alaska, you state directors. No. I'm in charge. And I'm going to prove them. You can't move without me. But give me a heads up. If it's regional interest, Deb Haaland might care about the New Mexico ones, or climate change, or racial equity, or whatever else she listed. So if this administration really wanted to do all it could to produce energy, which is what every American knows we need to do and what our allies know we need to do, and what Putin hopes we don't do, I think one thing they could do is to get Acting Assistant Secretary Laurel Daniel Davis's boot off the neck of the American energy sector. Because right now, she's in charge. Every permit on federal lands listed in her memo of March 19th, 2021, she's in charge of. Final resource management plans, records of decisions, coal leasing, mining operations, RS-2477, land sales, exchanges. What else we got here? Applications for permits to drill, oil and gas leases, applications for royalty relief. She's in charge of all that right now. In this administration, the president, Jen Psaki, others, has the audacity to look the American people in the eye and say, we're trying to do everything we can in our power to produce more. If you were, you would rescind this memo. Rescind this memo. So the next time the president or some of his staff or Secretary of Energy or Secretary of Interior try to spin the American people and tell them they're trying to help, I hope my friends in the media go, well, what about this memo? Come on, that's like basic federal government 101. If you're telling everybody stop, halt, and everything in the country has to be approved by her, that's not the way it works normally. But because of their anti-energy agenda, she's making the calls. But to make sure that you give her a heads up if it's related to some of the far left agenda that she literally lays out in the memo. I hope my friends in the media ask some questions. I hope they ask the question, is it related to this memo that New Mexico is getting all the drilling permits? Be a good question to ask, I think, don't you think? I think so. Alaska's not getting a lot. But New Mexico is. I wonder why. Maybe that is related to making sure she gets, quote, early notification of items that are high, local, state, or regional interests. Madam President, this is not a laughing matter. There's so much that we have to focus on in the world today, in America today. And one of the things this administration needs to do is they need a major course correction on their energy policy. You can't let energy be dictated by the far left of the Democratic Party. You can't let national security of America be dictated by the woke elements of the Democratic Party. And if you really are serious, Mr. President of the United States, you need to call Deb Haaland and say, rescind that memo. Let the officials, the professional staff of the federal agencies, which the president is in charge, do their job that they've done with every other administration, rescind this memo, and start helping our country produce American energy again. I yield the floor.